We're going to move ahead with our next session. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mark Robichaux. Mark is the Editorial Director for B&C Multichannel News and Next TV. I'd like him to join us up here with his special guest, Matthew Anderson, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for Roku. Come on up.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey,
welcome, Matthew.
thank you very much. Rule 101 of marketing is like alliteration is good in copy. So the Roku raffle, I hope that got things going a little bit. So
Yeah. No, it did. It did. And let me just say, I will not step on those blue suede shoes of yours, okay? I'm clearly dressed wrong for San Francisco. I got the tie on, and I don't have a cool pair of shoes or socks like we've seen in previous panels.
we can take you shopping after this, Mark.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Anderson is the Chief Marketing Officer of Roku. He just about runs everything over there. He's responsible for retail device sales, global marketing, communications, and customer service across the company's 3 business units: streaming media players, content and services, and OEM partnerships. He's got a wealth of experience. Before Roku, he was Group Director of Strategy and Corporate Affairs, Europe and Asia at News Corp, and before that at B-Sky-B. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Matthew, give us a quick update. We've heard a few panels here before, but give us a quick update on what Roku has been up to lately and what you do at the company. Just give us an introduction here.
Great. Thanks very much. And I know my colleague Ed Lee was here this morning, so I'll try not to repeat anything. We actually had a really big milestone at Roku a couple months ago, which was we crossed 10 million monthly active users. So a lot of what we do every day is to think about how do we build a base of people who love to stream, and how do we help them stream just as much as possible. So we think a great deal about engagement. And I think in the early stages, companies like Roku were really perceived as just selling a device, getting a player out there in the market. And we still continue to do that in our player business, which is very popular. But we also license our operating system to both television makers. It's called Roku TV. And we work very closely with operators, a program called the Roku Powered Program. So that's sort of our 3 ways of bringing customers into the Roku family. And then we've got a whole lot of tools to try to make them as active as possible. So what I do is run a sort of marketing organization around that.
And you guys currently have the lion's share of the market in the devices, right?
Yeah, so I think
beating Apple, Amazon.
In the player business, very competitive. You've got Google and Apple and Amazon and us. We probably have the most complete range of devices. So starting at the streaming stick, which Ellen just won, the Roku streaming stick, at less than $50, going all the way up to our Roku 4, which is a 4K player with lots of bells and whistles at $129. So we do try to segment the player market according to what people really like and need. And then if you add the TVs on top of that and this licensing business, we're actually growing much faster, I think, than the others.
I don't know how much you could talk about this, but can you break down for us with respect to how the revenue comes out on devices, advertising, and service? Can you give us an idea?
So essentially, a lot of our revenue still comes from selling hardware, and we actually make a profit on every device that we sell, and that does help to sort of fuel the growth of the business in the top line. But really our most important activities as a company are what we call media and licensing, and that's taking the Roku operating system and enabling partners to use it, or working with content companies to help them build an audience. And that really is now becoming the most important share of our future gross profit, which is around media and licensing.
Okay. And what are you most excited about now? What are you guys working on right now that gets you up in the morning?
I think the first thing is we were kind of joking about it beforehand. How many years ago was it that people said there are like 400 channels and nothing on, right? And you were frustrated sitting there with your remote and you couldn't find anything. I have like so many friends who tell me they want to take a sabbatical from work to catch up on TV now, right? And there's just a renaissance of TV. Between Hulu and Netflix and Amazon, they're going to spend $10 billion on original content, like in a year. You have companies like HBO and Showtime that we work with really, really closely. Their content is at an all-time high in terms of engagement, but they were always B2B companies. They were always selling and working through traditional distribution. And both of them have embraced streaming and embraced Roku as a partner tremendously. And so they're really becoming consumer marketers and audience builders directly themselves. I think you look at things like sports. Tomorrow night I'm going to stream the NBA Finals on my Roku, via ESPN Watch. I mean, how many people have streamed a sports game on TV, right? So, I mean, that's a lot. Wow. And how many of you came to Next TV a couple years ago and everyone said, well, if there's ever sports on TV, maybe streaming will take off, right? Super Bowl, 2016 is the year when the Super Bowl was streamed live on Roku and other services. These are absolute sea changes for people. So I think the content side is really dramatic. The other thing is that the longer tail is so good right now, and I'm sure a lot of you.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, whether we have a really big business around foreign language content, for example. If you want to watch TV in Hindi, the selection you can have between Z or Star or Yup TV or these things are fantastic. But the same applies to every category, fitness and cooking and lifestyle and news. We've got 100+ news channels now. And so people are really, no two people are the same, and they're finding that they get a couple blockbusters, but also the channel that's just right, right for them. The other thing that really wakes me up every morning is just that it's easy to forget the pace of how much the technology in the home is changing every year. So if you break it into pieces, there will be about 42 million streaming players sold around the world this year. So that's a big growth in people who are going to be streaming right there. But there are about 240 million televisions that will be sold this year around the world. And the percentage of those that are smart TVs is growing very, very quickly. In the US, over half will be smart TVs.
And Roku will be in a lot of those, right?
We'll be in a lot of those, right? And then the third thing, though, is that the traditional operators are still distributing about 250 million set-top boxes a year. And that is also shifting towards the internet as well. And so I think every morning, what can we do to get a bigger share of 500 million new devices that will be going into consumer homes around the world? And that's just a big opportunity for us, and we're well positioned in each of those buckets.
Mm-hmm. Let me go back to just something you said earlier, because it's been a topic that a lot of people in the industry are worried about. You called it a TV renaissance, more big companies spending literally billions of dollars. Some other people would call it a content bubble. And I don't want to get too far off on a tangent here, but do you think we're in a content bubble, or is the universe ever expanding?
Yeah. Well, I think an ever-expanding universe might be a little uncomfortable, but one of the big changes I see in media generally, I've worked in just about every area of TV. I've even worked at newspapers, and the whole media industry used to be very geographically tied, right? You'd have a local newspaper, and it could do okay competing with content against a local newspaper. But if you had a national newspaper, their resources for reporting and coverage was just so much more vast and bigger. And the same thing's happening with TV, basically, which is that these smaller platforms, that used to be owned and operated stations or regional TV networks or things like that, you now have companies like Netflix or Amazon or others who literally are thinking about programming on a global basis, who literally can take that original content investment and try to monetize that over people in 120 countries. And of course there are barriers and language and things like that, but it's a big opportunity for great content to find an audience. Even services like Viki and others, or Crunchyroll. I mean, look, Crunchyroll is one of the top OTT services in the United States, with anime and other things like that. It's a fantastic achievement by just operating itself very well. So actually, I think that the competition is really improving the consumer outcomes. I think people are now easily able on something like a Roku TV to switch from billions to transparent to a Stars program, Outlander, to something else, and I think it's good, and I think they'll do okay.
One of the things that I think you said earlier that makes your service popular is if you're looking for a particular show, for the 5 people in here that don't own a Roku, you can automatically see where that show is playing.
Yeah. So I think probably the biggest differentiator for us, and I think one of the things that contributes to our success a lot, is that we're agnostic about any specific content partner on the service. And our major competitors own their own content stack, basically, and they do orient their user experience towards favoring that stack. And what we find is that no 2 people are the same. And some people really love Google Play. Some people want Prime Video. Some people want Vudu. Some people want something else, iTunes. And what we want to do is to be like the Switzerland in this mix and offer as much choice as possible, have the best content offering, and then give tools so that you can watch what you want on the terms that you want to pay for.
But Matthew, does Roku have any interest in developing its own content or possibly its own SVOD service?
Yeah. So we have no plans.
A lot of people are looking at that.
Yeah, a lot of people are. So I think right now we see that we are an incredible partner in launching new services and helping people reach this audience. But what we're not trying to do is to say, if you come to Roku, you're going to uniquely be shuttled into one system over another. So what you mentioned earlier was search. We've continued to put a lot of effort into what we call universal search. We've got more than 30 partners right now. And we've always returned our search results in the way that's most consumer friendly. So if you put in Mad Max Fury Road, we'll show you every app that participates in search, where it is, and we'll show it to you where it's free first, where it's free for you first, in ascending order of price. And this is a huge trust builder for people. So we've done that. And then last year, we began to iterate on this very, very quickly as we saw that there was sort of this, people searched, but we wanted to say, well, what if the search could keep searching and search after and know things that you would like to know in the future? And there were a couple questions that were interesting. The biggest one was, when can I watch something when it's cheaper? So we created something called the Roku feed and a button called follow. And so you could look at a piece of content, again, Mad Max, or I don't want to pick on anything particular, but I was not going to rush out and see Hot Tub Time Machine 2 in the theater.
That's great acting in that movie.
Great
Come
acting,
on,
great acting.
Come on.
Yeah, tearjerker, right? And so what I could do is I could follow that piece of content, and when it became available to stream, I'd get a notification, and it would say, hey, I can now watch that piece. And maybe that's in the electronic sell-through, and it was $19. And I said, well, I'm not quite ready for that at 19. It might then say, hey, you can rent this on Fandango for $5.99. It might then go through its life cycle and eventually be on a service and say, you can watch this for free as part of Prime. And so people absolutely love this because we're doing the work for them, and it's telling you, watch it on your terms, watch it on a price that counts for you. And our content partners love it because it's surfacing things that they have and that they're investing in without necessarily the person having to go browse for them.
And browsing and navigating and searching, as we heard from the gentleman from Hulu earlier, is death, right? You don't want people doing that.
Well, actually, so my view, so Ben and Hulu is a fantastic partner of ours. And I think what you have is that there will be a handful of destination apps. What Netflix or Hulu can put into their UI is extraordinary, and they have resources that other companies may not. And so I think we'll all go to some destination apps, and we'll look and browse, and we may find something that we like. The second is, if we know we want to watch something but we don't know where it is, we'll search.